Hey, it's Jess, and welcome to The Heart Strong, a podcast where we explore navigating the challenges in our lives. It's my personal mission to guide you towards your greatest potential. So come along with me as we explore living with courage, or as I put it, living heart strong. All right, on today's podcast, I'm sitting down with my friend Jen Deweerd. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jess.
Jen serves with her husband, Jeremy, as the senior leaders of City First Church, a growing, multi-generational, multicultural church with multiple locations in Florida and Illinois.
Lots of multis in there.
I know. I was just thinking about that when I'm like, ooh, got a lot of multis. Jen is a pastor, communicator, author, and founder of the Orginal Women's Conference. She holds a master's degree in ministerial leadership, and she's passionate about encouraging and empowering others to step into their God-given callings. Through her Orginal conferences, thousands of women have discovered their destiny and purpose. Jen is also mom to 3 sons. We got 2 boy moms here. Boy moms, yay. And I'm honored to call her a friend. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for asking me. And it's just fun to sit down with a friend and have a chat.
It is. And I want to thank City First Church and all the other people who are in this room who are making this possible. It's super fun to do this in person. Yes. I am really excited about it. So thank you.
Me too.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about the negative voices that are in our head and how they impact our lives, how we view ourselves, and also how it impacts us living into our purpose. And we're going to talk about leadership and serving through our stories. And so something that you might not know about me is I'm kind of like really interested and nerd out a little bit on the idea of faith and culture. I think it's very interesting, especially in the world that we live in today. And this podcast is all about how we grow through challenges in our lives. And I don't think we can talk about life challenges and growth without also talking about faith and questions and what do we believe in and why. Really and for me personally, like that's been such an important part of my story. And so I always want to invite people into that because I think that's how we come to know ourselves. And so today we're going to explore some of that with Jen.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
So honored to be here and be able to sit down.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, and I do hope at some point, and maybe when we talk about PACs, that we get to talk about even how our friendship, how our paths merged, because it comes down to that.
It
like
really does.
Some difficult challenges that we had and how our stories merged.
Together. Yeah, so I'm excited about that too. I think that's a really fun part about our relationship that a lot of people don't know.
Yes.
So a 2020 study found that humans have 60,000 thoughts a day, which I kind of believe.
Do women have more?
Yeah, they might. I don't know. I was like, ooh, I want to get into that a little bit more. And then the National Science Foundation, this is really interesting, says that 80% of our thoughts are negative and 95% of our thoughts are repetitive. So we're having repetitive negative thoughts filling our mind throughout our day, which is exhausting.
Yes.
Right?
I'm not surprised. I mean, honestly.
I'm not either. And you think about what that means that humans are carrying around, right?
Yes.
I mean, which is crazy.
Yep.
So I was recently at one of your Original Women's Nights. You have about 500 women on a Friday night, and we kind of get together, and you talk about different things. Yeah. And this night you were talking about unsubscribing from like the negative emotions that are in our heads. And I felt when I was in the room, like I felt like everybody was just like, oh my gosh, yes. It's just something I sensed that women were like, I feel this way, you know? And so I'm wondering if you can share with us as we begin today, like what was going on in your own mind where you were like, this is something I want to think about and I want to teach about.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So the idea of unsubscribe, just to, talk about it for a second, that night I talked about how our minds are kind of like inboxes. Yeah. And we, a lot of times we give ourselves, it's kind of like our physical inbox. All of a sudden, like there's all kinds of things that are filling it. And before you know it, your inbox is completely filled with things that you're like, wait a second, I didn't even know I invited that in. Yeah. Like maybe you bought something at Nordstrom's and now everybody has, is trying to sell you something. And the more we have, a lot of times it actually drowns out the things that we should be paying attention to, the things that maybe we really want to have. And so the idea of that there is this little button in your email inbox called unsubscribe. And I think even in iCloud now, it's actually up at the top. You don't even have to scroll to the bottom of the email and hit unsubscribe, but you can actually hit unsubscribe. And I just thought that was a really interesting concept when it comes to our physical minds, because a lot of times I don't even think we pay attention to what we're thinking about.
Yeah.
And so, but once we do and we're going, oh my goodness, we start taking notes, like our tallying, oh, am I thinking about negative things all the time? And am I repetitively thinking about negative things? Once you know what those things are and the challenges and the mind games that you're having, then going, okay, I'm going to intentionally now unsubscribe. And really that whole message on that Friday night came out of a journey that I had been on, where I felt for probably like the last 18 months. I mean, I think it was like 2 months ago I spoke that message. I had just been, in a funk in my mind. And there was just, I would wake up in the middle of the night and my inbox would be out of control. Negative thoughts, things that, even when I say them out loud, I almost feel like I almost cringe. But my big line, if we're just going to have an honest conversation here, my big line has always been, you're so stupid. Like, I literally wake up in the middle of the night and that is the first thing that comes into my mind. And it's so, and then during the day it would it'd be that repetitive thought. And I just remember I was actually taking a walk around our neighborhood, because we're neighbors.
We are neighbors.
We're neighbors. And I just felt like, since we're going to talk about faith, the Lord was like, it's time to unsubscribe. Like, that is not, it's not truth. It's not who I've made you to be. It's not that's not how I'm asking you to walk. You can't walk out your purpose if that's what you believe about yourself. And so I've been on this journey then of going, no, I'm going to unsubscribe. And literally, even last night, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I started to lean into that thought, and I was like, no, I unsubscribed from that. So I'm not picking that back up. That's not allowed in my inbox. And obviously that's how we go about recognizing those and then unsubscribing. That's a journey. And it's discovering kind of really, I think, just paying attention. I think a lot of times, and I think I would challenge the listeners to be like, okay, actually think about what you're thinking.
Yeah. Like, noticing, right?
Like
noticing, like, okay, now I'm going down that path like you did when you woke up.
Yes.
And I don't want to think about that anymore. Yeah. Instead of just, because we think we are our emotions, or we think we are our thoughts. And it's almost like looking at it as a third person, right? Of just noticing.
Oh, totally. And I think a lot of times if the way we talk to ourselves, we would never allow someone to talk to somebody we love like that. And I would never talk to you the way sometimes I talk to myself in my mind. I just would never do that. But we feel this permission almost, or this, like, it's almost that we deserve to talk negatively to ourselves, I think sometimes, maybe. I don't know what all the, psychology is in it, but I think that is a really, and I've actually heard this quote, I think I used it that night. Jenny Allen, she's an author, and she recently wrote a book called, I think, Get Out of Your Head. It's like a really great title. But she talks about she's like, I'm convinced that the greatest battle of our generation is being fought between our ears.
Wow. And
I would say, working with a lot of women, working with a lot of just people in general, men and women, like, I'm a pastor. My husband and I are pastors of a church. We sit down with a lot of people. We are connected to a lot of people. And I don't know of one person who doesn't, to some degree, have things that they're battling that are untrue, that I don't think God ever meant us to be speaking those things to ourselves. And so, I think just even being aware of what we're thinking, what we're telling ourselves. And then it's not just enough sometimes to either just to be like, oh, there it is, I know it's negative, but then you have to replace that. Right. You have to be like, okay, for me in my faith journey, I look at the scripture and go, what does God say about who I am, about what he's called me to do, about how he's asked me to live? And then I take that lie and I replace it with something that I believe to be true about myself.
Yeah. So on the thought of replacing, I think that's really interesting, because for me, one thing that I have done before is I've literally taken my journal and I will write down all the things, the negative messages that I'm telling myself, or the things about my life. And then I've made myself, and I don't know where I got this idea, replace it with something else. So it's like for me, sometimes I feel like, well, things are too broken, things are too far gone. You're never going to do the things that you really want to do because you're always going to have a tragedy in your life. Like, these are the things that I tell myself. Yeah. And I've had to literally write down on another side of a piece of paper, you're created on purpose.
That's right.
Your story matters. The things that you're going through are going to be part of the reason that you do accomplish the things that you desire. But it's like, we have to be so intentional about that. So like, let's just be really practical. Like, you noticed that you were having these thoughts.
Yep.
You decided that you wanted to change, or you want to do something, and it's a practice. Like, how's it going? Like, how's that practice going? Like, what does it feel like to notice it? And is it something that you have to be aware of, like, every day? Or like, how are you kind of practically going about that?
Well, I think a couple things. First of all, I think it is going to it is a daily battle. I and do I think things get a little easier as you walk and as you journey? Yes, but I think it's kind of like health, like if you're going to get yourself like in shape, man, those first like 6 weeks that you go to the gym, you're like, why am I here? But as 6 weeks, you're feeling a little better. 6 months, you're like, okay, I'm feeling stronger. It's not like you're actually able to lift more and than you were when you weren't doing anything. And I think sometimes our mind, we do have to look at it like a muscle. I think it you know what I mean? And going, okay, I'm going to have to be very intentional, and there's going to have to be a discipline to it. I loved your journal idea of going. I think there's something powerful about sitting down and actually writing it down and not just letting it be. And that takes time. Yeah. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take investment. And I think, and I do think for one of the things, I remember it was a message I spoke long time ago. It was called Unstuck. And because I think that I go through seasons of this where I'm like really winning. Yeah. I think we all have where I'm winning the battle in my mind. I'm winning. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, my inbox is full again. And I remember there's a scripture that talked about remembering how God has come through in the past. And I think for you, and one of the things I remember too is, in order to help me move forward, is I remember, okay, I'm not going to be here forever. Like, it's not like I've seen him, I've won before. I've beat this before. I've gotten strong before, and I'm going to do it again. And so I can tend to look back and go, okay, where have I seen God pull through for me in the past? And then I hold on to those things. So I think those are some of the practical, and like I said, that replacement idea of, I do like, what my go-to is like, if I'm feeling certain ways, I find a scripture, and sometimes, and if you're new to like even this whole like scripture thing or Bible, or you're kind of like, I don't even know where to start, talk to a friend who even like who knows that. Or if that's not even something that you are journeying in right now, a faith journey, ask somebody. Like, I would be like, Jess, what do you see in me? That what would be like, this is what I'm dealing with. What what do you see in me that I can hang on to? That would be a truth. And I think that is part of it, honestly. And I know we're maybe going to talk about this later, but I think community is huge in, kind of once you, I think that's why that night was so powerful, because there was 500 women who were all going, oh dear, I thought I was the only one.
I'm not. Yes.
I was the
Me
only one.
Too.
Yes. I was the only one that dealt with this. And, we had this little exercise where we wrote down, it was just this last minute idea I had, where we wrote down what our lie was that we were believing, and then we crumpled it up when we threw it. And I was like, well, I have no idea how many. Maybe there's going to be 2 people that come down and like throw their, just going, no, I'm done with this. I'm unsubscribing. And I don't know. There might have been 2 people that actually didn't do that.
Yeah, it was
because
the floor was full.
Yes, it was. Yeah. It was a powerful moment. And I think part of the power of that was going, I'm not alone in this. And because I think we tend to do that. Like, I can look at you, Jess, and go, man, you're a go-getter. You're walking out your purpose. You are so smart. I mean, you're intelligent. You're great at what you do. And I could sit back and be like, Jess doesn't struggle with the same things in her mind as I do in mine. And they might not be exactly the same, but you have battles. And I think part of it is when we are not sitting down, talking, and you're not sharing, this is where I'm at. I think it's hard sometimes to, I think it just gives us good perspective.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second, about this idea that there are some people that we think are exempt from these ideas, right? I think it's a really important thing to talk about. So someone might look at you, Jen, and they might say, well, you're pastoring this church, you have all of this experience, you lead in front of all these people, you're comfortable on a stage, you're a great mom, you're beautiful, you're intelligent, like all the things. You have all the things. Well, no, I mean, these are real things that people would say, right? Someone like her doesn't have these negative thoughts. Someone like her doesn't struggle with these things. But that's just not true. No. Like, do you know anyone, think of the people, because you have a wide range of people, people all over the place who are, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes, successful at what they're doing, that don't struggle with negative thoughts in their head.
No, and I think I don't know one. And I think I kind of bought into that lie at one point in my life where I was like, no, I know, like the people that I look up to, in my line of work, people who are great communicators, people who are just walking confidently in their calling and what they in their purpose, they don't struggle with the same things I do. And nothing could be further from the truth. I think they've just figured out that they're not going to buy into the lie, and they're not going to live that way, and they're going to do the hard work and the heart work to combat those. And there really is, honestly, I think people, it's and I think when we do that, which comes to comparison, you know what I mean? We start to compare ourselves. Man, that is an incredibly comparison will keep us isolated, and it will keep us. It'll tell us to sit down.
Yeah.
And
be
shut
quiet.
up.
Yep.
You said it so much nicer. Be quiet. And. But man, I've just discovered that so many people, the people that I look up to, are also people that are dealing with things, and it's just easy to sit and go, well, they don't have that struggle,
right?
Or the same type of struggles. And again, they might be a little bit different, but I think those people are just people who have decided, honestly, to go, I'm not going to let my feelings dictate what I step into, whether that be fear, insecurity, whatever your thing is, your negative thought that you keep repeating over and over, and to go, no, I'm not going to let that. And that's a battle. I mean, people say, like you even said it, like, well, you're confident on a stage. I'm like, well, if you would have seen me 15 years ago, I was like, my husband had to drag me up there, and was like, seriously, like, I just want you to greet the people at church, greet the guests. And I'm like, I would sit on the front row and be like, I hate this. Why am I doing this? And then I'd get up there and be like, welcome to church, But I knew that what got me up on that stage was the fact that I knew that I'm called to love people. I'm called to help people discover Jesus. And if and the role I'm in, if that's that, I have to do that in order to be able to walk out that purpose and calling. That's not going to be everybody's purpose and calling, is to sit with a microphone in front of their face. And I think, you just have to choose to go. And that's going to be I think sometimes we think we if it's comfortable, then it's right.
Yes.
That's not. The more I've discovered in life is that actually it's the more uncomfortable you are, probably that's what you're supposed to be doing.
So that's like exactly kind of goes into one of the other things I was thinking about, but also in something that's not on that I just thought of sitting here was just how our negative emotions can impact are living out our purpose and are living out courageously, stepping out in faith and courage for the things that we are called to do, and how they keep us small, you know, and how they can really inhibit us. And so, you know, if you're listening and you're struggling with these negative thoughts and you feel like they're crippling, an impetus for you to work through them, to start noticing them, to writing them down, to writing the antidote to them, is that by not doing that, you're actually inhibiting yourself from the calling on your life potentially, right?
Yes, I think so. And let's not like it's calling.
Yeah.
That's your calling as a mom.
Well, just showing up for your kids.
Just showing up for your kids. Just, I mean, this is practical everyday stuff.
Or living in joy.
Yes.
I mean, it takes away the joy, right? It takes away, just if you think about the kind of parent that you want to be, or the kind of spouse that you want to be, or the kind of manager at work that you want to be. Those things they're robbing our joy. Right?
No, I completely agree. And I think, taking those steps to recognizing what they are, the negative thoughts that we have, and the path that we go down in our minds, recognizing those and taking captive those thoughts, you know, and really being intentional. That means, that's a scripture, you know, and that means being very intentional. Then I think we start to go, okay, we do really start to discover who we are and be able to walk out, you know, our macro purpose and our micro purpose in the everyday things, and find joy in the life that we're called to live and what God's put in our hands.
So one of the things that enhances our negative thoughts is loneliness, being by ourselves, which is really an epidemic, because people are lonelier than they ever have been. And then you add to that the seemingly perfect lives that people have on social media, where, you know, we all sit behind our phones and think, oh, it must be nice that she's got, you know.
Her kids are perfect.
Her kids are perfect.
Her hair's perfect.
Her life's perfect, and, you know, everything. You know, her marriage is perfect, or whatever it is. But science suggests that loneliness reinforces our negative thoughts. Like it's like this positive feedback loop, right? So we think negatively about ourselves. No one wants to be around me. I'm not good enough. I'm stupid. I'm broken. I'm not, you know, and then we stay by ourselves, and it just keeps going right in a loop. And I'll say that I've experienced seasons of that. So I know it's true for the N of one, which is me, but it suggests that the antidote to that might be community and a faith community for people. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your experience of the power of community, the power of a faith community, as it pertains to just your own life and experience, but also like what you've seen in the people that you do life with and serve.
No, it's a really good question. I think that, first of all, I think the way our world is set up right now is really, it is, everything about it is just stay to yourself. You know, I remember actually somebody saying, you know, we used to have front porches and now we have back decks.
Oh, that's so
So
true.
like the front porch was where people gathered. Like you knew like people didn't have attached garages. Now we just pull into our garage, shut the door. You don't, you know, and especially up here in the Midwest, we don't see our neighbors for like
it's
half
freezing.
the year because it's freezing.
Right.
And then you put in there the busyness of life. Like our kids are in 7 different sports, and you're running here, you're running there, and you don't have the time to actually invest in the things that are maybe going to be life-giving to you. Because if we're just running around like chickens with our heads cut off, as my mom used to say, and that gives us it's hard to then become very intentional about creating that community. And we see that even in our world, in church attendance. I mean, people attend church now like once every, before COVID, it was 4 weeks. And now it's like up to 6 to 8 weeks.
year
or once every 6
once
to 8
every
weeks.
6
So
weeks.
once
Okay.
every 2 months, like
Okay.
say. So that's 6 times a year. And for us, I mean, as pastors, we're saying, listen, community. I mean, when you read all throughout Scripture, we are wired to be together. That is the way. Even the Adam and Eve. Like, it's not good for man to be alone. That's not just for marriage. That is like you are not
humans.
For humans.
Yeah.
It's not good to be alone. And we live in a society where we're kind of like everything is set up to kind of just keep us to ourselves.
Well, yeah, Amazon and pick up your Starbucks.
Exactly. You don't even have to go to Target.
Drive up Target. I mean, yeah, it is.
Yes, everything. Yeah. And so I think that, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think science and spirituality, yes. I mean, there's so much about the Scripture that was way ahead of its time, like that were things we're just discovering now scientifically that we're like, oh, actually,
we've always known
this.
We've
always known this. And I think the power of community is one of those things. And I think I think it's important, I would say. I hate saying that you have to be, but I think it's important that we go, okay, how are we putting ourselves purposefully in community with other people?
Yeah.
And I think the faith aspect and the church aspect is a huge part of that. We've even started doing that, like as neighbors. Like we have our little neighborhood Bible study, we're calling it. But even with that, I mean, I think 20 years ago it would have been easy to be like every week, like we're going to get together. And now we're going, man, with your schedule and our friends' schedules, everybody's schedule, like okay, every 3 to 4 weeks. But I applaud that because I'm like, we're being intentional about it. We're putting ourselves in that area where we're not just together, but we're having honest conversations. We're sharing where we're really at. And I think that's something that's hugely missing in our world. And I think those are powerful aspects of a faith community, is that you're able to share, you're able to pray for each other, you're able to journey with each other, text each other, hey, how are you doing with that? How is Bodie doing today? I know I didn't see him get on the bus. You know what I mean? I know those seem like simple things, but those are things that most people do not have in their life right now. And I think for us, at least what we've seen is that the power of a faith community is an antidote to a lot of that loneliness.
Well, and it also, I think I love what you said about the intentional piece of it. So again, if you're listening and you're feeling the negative emotions and you're feeling the loneliness, sometimes it's like getting to the gym the first time is really uncomfortable.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Walking into a church the first time is really uncomfortable. Or walking into a community of people that you're like, I know I need this. I'm dealing with these negative emotions that say you don't belong here, or you're not cool enough to be here, or whatever those things are. And it's like plowing through that and saying, I'm gonna give this a go. And I also think the other piece is like, we get afraid to open ourselves up to people. And I know that I can do this in my life, because when things are going on, you're like, I don't want to burden them. I don't really want to even get into it. Like, I don't want to put this, or I'm afraid of how they're going to react to me. And so I think those are real things that we feel. And I mean, I have felt. And so it's but you have to work at finding a community, finding people that you want to be part of, and then opening yourself up to them.
Yeah. And I think too, and I mean, I'll say, just being honest as a pastor, I know that it can be hard to find that right community of faith sometimes, but I want to challenge those that are listening. Don't just, my husband says this, he's like, just because you had a bad haircut once doesn't mean you don't go get another haircut. Like, you just it's going to take effort. Like, we have people that come to our church that'll be like, we were looking for church for 6 months. Wow. Like, they were just like, where do we find that we belong and we feel like we can plant, like, you know what I mean? Like,
and be
put
part
roots
of something.
down and be part of something.
Yeah.
And I think, man, putting yourself out there, and it is, I mean, I say all the time, like, especially, I mean, I used to do the greeting every Sunday morning and be like, if you've braved walking in this place for the very first time. Yeah. Because it is brave, I think, to walk into a new church, a new space, a new place for the very first time. Yeah. But I think what you'll find is if you seek it out out, you'll find that place where you belong. And, the cool thing is too, now you can actually check out a church online
before you
go,
that's true.
And different churches be like, this is what you can expect. And this is how, they'll take you through tours, video tours of the church, and it's just, but sometimes it's, we understand, especially, I think we've tried to do this at City First, to be like, listen, it's okay. There's no experience necessary. Yeah. You belong here. Everybody is welcome. And it's, we're all on a spiritual journey, and no matter where you're at, you're welcome here. So find a place where you can, start discovering that.
Start and take the first step.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's good.
So I want to talk about Original Conference.
Okay.
Because it's coming up.
Yeah. April 21st and 22nd.
Yep.
Friday night through a Saturday.
Okay.
Like early
so
evening.
if you're in Northern Illinois, Chicagoland area, and you're listening, and you're welcome to come, we're inviting you.
Oh, yes. Would love to have you come.
It's a really beautiful service. And I think I remember, I this isn't in my notes, but I'm gonna share it. I came to Original Conference. I didn't know you. I think it was maybe a few years after Ethan died. I sat up in the way back because I hadn't set foot in a church in probably 3 or 4 years because I was angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just, there were just so many things that had happened. And I remember sitting there, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm a little uncomfortable, but and I have a history of going to church my whole life. So it's not like this was new, but and I was like, and then there was somebody that talked, I can't remember who it was, and she was kind of talking about a struggle in her life. And it was like, I'm like, okay, well, I don't have the same one, but she's openly talking about hers. So, and she's vulnerably sharing. Yeah. So, okay, this is cool, and it kind of drew me in, and so it felt like maybe there's something here for me. And so I guess I just want to say that it's a wonderful experience. And so if you're a person listening or a woman listening, like, you don't have to come to this or anything else that you feel drawn to because you're 100% sure that it's for you. And it's okay to walk into something saying, I'm not in the best place. I'm not sure I'm down with this. I'm kind of ticked off at my life right now. I'm a little, and that's honest, right? Because and so I don't know how many, I actually found something because I was looking up the ticket that I bought this year, and it was like 2015 or 2016. Wow. So it was in my calendar. Yeah. So I've been coming for this time, and it's just really beautiful to watch what you've created. So I guess I want to know, like, what are you noticing about women and their needs, and what is kind of like your heart, your intuition telling you of how you want to serve women given the culture and the world that we're living in?
Well, that's a really good question. And first of all, thank you for all those kind words. Seriously, we've, I think this is going to be year 16.
Wow.
And, really the heart of it was just to set a table for women to come and experience, Jesus. Really, at the end of the day, it's all about Jesus for us. And so, but it doesn't matter where you're at, like, just to repeat what I said, on your spiritual journey. And it's the same with Original. It isn't, I think that's the thing we have to debunk too in our heads. And I love that you talked about that, is that it's not church isn't just for the spiritual people.
Yeah. For people who have it all figured out.
All together.
Right.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Really, what we are is just a bunch of broken people that are choosing to come together and go, we want to learn how to love Jesus more, and see what he and connect with our Creator, the one who made us. And so I think that is honestly the heart of, in the church in general, but Original is original in itself, the term. It's not just like, in this world right now, it's kind of like, just be an original, like nobody's like you. And yes, that's true. But actually that idea is living out our original design that God created for us. And that ultimately we believe is to be in relationship with him. And so if we can just set a table, I think at the most basic, we've talked a couple things, like, we've talked about community and we've talked about the mind, which I think are two huge things, which I would say are at the very top of the list that I feel like women deal with. In the mind, and that mental health, and kind of struggling with our thought life a lot of times, and then community. Like I think women have a hard time kind of stepping into community. I don't know if it's our insecurities. I don't know if it's our comparison. Yes, like we don't. The weird thing, right, is that we want to be fully known.
Yeah,
like we really desire that, but then we don't put ourselves
in those places
where we can be fully known. Right. And so I think those are a couple of things that women deal with. But at its most basic issue, like if I'm speaking to what I think women deal with, I honestly feel like everything that and again, this is from my perspective as a pastor, I feel like everything that we struggle with, that we deal with, that we our fears, our insecurities, our struggles, all the things, I think it can come back to a disconnectedness from God. And when I love this line. We actually said it at that original Unsubscribe. Like, if you knew Jesus, then you'd love him. Like and I think the church sometimes, and I'll own this, maybe you're listening today and you are saying, but I was hurt at a church, or I've known, people who wore the T-shirt for Jesus. Right. They would not.
There's no, the authenticity piece. I think is a huge one for people.
And I would just say, if you've experienced that, man, I apologize for that. And I just say, I'm sorry that you experienced that. But man, it's, God is bigger than his people, thank God. Because even in my humanness, I know I've let people down. I know that I have not always, reflected Christ in the way I should have. But I do know this. I know that I am fully known and loved by my Creator, and he desires to be in relationship with me. And I think that everything that we struggle with and deal with, if we really knew God's thoughts towards us, if we really understood who he was, we'll never fully understand who he is. Right. Like the depths of who he is too great. But even just if we could connect with him, I think we'd see a lot of the things that maybe we struggle with. Not they don't disappear, but we're not doing them alone.
Right.
We're not. And I think, so I think our Original is all about introducing people to Jesus and saying, hey, listen, we think that the ultimate thing that you can have is a relationship with Jesus. Yeah. And in that, doesn't make following Jesus doesn't make everything go away. Like, I think that's a lie.
Yeah, that's a lie.
That's a lie. That's a lie.
Right.
Or that things will always be.
You'll get everything you want. The outcome's going to be, that's not.
No, it's not. Yeah. I think, but I think you're not alone anymore. And I think there is gives purpose to the pain that we walk through. And there is,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's good. That's good.
I know all of your listeners are like, "Whoa, we're talking
good.
Jesus today."
I love you, Jen.
I love you, Jess.
So let's talk a little bit about like this church community. Like I want to get into the culture and faith piece, because I think one of the things that I really respect about you and Jeremy, and about what I know that you do, is that you want faith to be relevant for people, because you know that you can't just spout all the words. Like, people have to come and they have to feel like this is applicable to my life. Yeah. And so in order to do that as a pastor and a leader, you have to know what's going on in the world. You have to be in tune to the culture and to the things that people are dealing with. And I think that you guys do a really, really good job of that. So you said, actually, it was maybe a week ago, like, there's so many more people coming to church lately, and we're not even sure where they're coming from. Like, that's super cool. Yeah. And why do you think that is? Because I guess the other question that I wanted to ask you, which we can get into too, is that people are kind of leaving church today. Like that there's that going on. And so what do you think are, like, what's down the middle of that road? What are the issues that people are, like, the desperation, I need this, but I'm not sure about it. What's going on with people culturally that you're seeing in terms of church? And then how are you trying to, like, address that for people and serve them in what you're doing here?
That's good. I think that there is a lot of which I think people are, I mean, this was pre-COVID, but obviously things are amplified since COVID. But there is I think people are experiencing a lot of pain. I mean, just in this world, I mean, I just think it's just a broken world. Let's just be honest. Uncertainty, there's lots of uncertainty, and there's a lot of chaos. Like read the news. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And so I think people are, when you sit in that for a while and are in it, I think people start to go, okay, I need to find some answers. And I think a lot of people are coming because of what they're experiencing in the world. And honestly, I think the world is promising a lot of things. Yeah. It's like, if you do this, you'll get this. If you do that, if you live that way, if you live your truth, you're just we're always searching. Like, we were actually talking about this in our podcast, or not our podcast, in a life group the other day. Yeah. But everybody has that God-shaped hole. Yeah. And I think we can do all we want to fill that with money or, accomplishments, a nice house. Yes. I mean, that next best thing that we think we need. And ultimately, that brings happiness for a little while. But once I think if you live the way the world wants you to live for long enough, eventually, at some point, if you're intellectually honest with yourself, I think, because we can totally lie to ourselves and be like, no, I'm happy. I'm really happy, But I think if we really go, being intellectually honest with myself, a lot of people are coming to the place where they're saying, there's got to be more. There's got to be more. There's got to be more than this. And I think that's what we're seeing is people are, they're experiencing that pain, uncertainty, chaos, coupled with filling their life with all the things that they thought would bring them happiness. And it's just, I think people are going, there's more. And I do think there is a hunger there's a spiritual hunger in people. I think that we're seeing, like, even honestly in the last 6 months, it's like people want real. They're like, we're just kind of sensing that as pastors. And I think, how do we try and connect with that at City First? I think, man, first of all, we try and just really talk normal. Like, I know that sounds really we're talking with people who 50 years ago maybe had some sense of they understood the terminology, even some spiritual terminology of scripture and the Bible. But, it's almost like, they don't teach cursive anymore in school, and so both of my two older boys, when I write in cursive, they're like, I can't read this. I can't read that. And so I'm all like, I'm sorry, guys. So I could as their mom, be like, what is your problem? I'm going to keep writing in cursive. Yeah. Because darn it, the school should have taught it. Or I can be like, well, I'm going to write in print so that you can actually read what I am trying to say. And so I think as a church, we've tried to go, okay, how do we just talk normal? Does that make sense?
Well, it's meeting people where they're at.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
really what you're
not
saying,
being
right?
upset at you because you don't understand all the spiritual terminology or you don't know how to do church, whatever that means. It's more going, okay, let's just try and be, and we're not perfect at it, and we have to keep reminding of ourselves of that. But even just being like, the people who are walking in our doors, we want to be real, we want to be authentic, we want to try and boil spiritual principles down to like they've got handles, that
they can take with them.
And just, man, and I think people, they do just want real. So that's what I think. Like, and so when you walk in the doors, I mean, hopefully from the moment you actually drive on the parking lot or you click on, if you're watching online, there's this sense of like, these are just normal everyday people. But yet there's something different because they're nice. You know what I mean? And more than Walmart or, Target nice or whatever. Actually, there's not a lot of nice people out. I don't feel anymore. Hard. I mean, people are just in a really difficult situations. Yes. And so yeah, I hope that answers.
No, I think that's true. I think that is just meeting people where they're at.
Yes.
It's such a simple thing, right?
Yes.
And it's in all these complex things. It's actually pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what, and I do think the real is really big.
Yes.
Real is really big. But it's true. People want
Yes.
real. They're sick
Yeah.
of being sold a bill of goods. They're sick of being sold it by churches, by politicians, by
Yep.
whomever
Yep.
it is. It's like because at the end of the day, I always say this. I just actually recorded a podcast with a cardiac surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him about the drive home on a hard day.
Oh, wow.
Like, what's that car ride like?
Wow.
And I always think about this as people, because we all know, I mean, we all get in our car when we're by ourselves, and that's when we can have a good cry.
Yeah.
Or we can go through the thoughts, the things that we're actually really thinking about, where we can be really honest with ourselves.
That's really good.
And so it's like, those are the places that people need to be met, in those car ride thoughts.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And so everybody knows what that is. So when they can detect it in an organization, in a church, in a person, in a whatever,
Yeah.
that's what they're going to be drawn to that.
Yes.
Because people
Yes.
are desperate, I think, for real.
I 1,000%. And I think even that unsubscribe message, I was
Yeah.
actually looking at my notes of it. At the top, I was all like, I try and be a vulnerable, authentic person, and that was a very raw message for me, because I was, and I
You were
think
honest.
people connect with that though, because
Yeah.
I think we all, and that's what we want, just people too that are just willing to sit, like,
Say it.
say
Admit
it,
it.
and then just be like,
Yeah.
and also just, sit down,
Yeah.
have a conversation,
about it.
and
yeah.
I mean, we can't do that with everybody, but we have
But
people
this is a way
around us.
we can do it too,
Yes.
right? And just being honest
1,000%.
about our lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to go back to what we talked about in the beginning about how we met,
Yes.
because I think that's a really cool part of the
Uh-huh.
conversation.
Mhm.
And I want to make sure we do that before we end. So we met, if I'm recalling properly, because both of our boys were working with like a developmental therapist through like early intervention or something.
Mhm.
And she had connected us. And so you have a son named Pax, and he has Down syndrome, was born
Yep.
with Down syndrome.
Yep.
And he's 10, right?
11.
11. Oh my gosh, he's 11.
I know,
Okay.
it's just-
because he's the same as Chase. Yeah, 11. And he rides the bus with my son Bodie together. And, that's kind of how we met. So tell me about Pax, and tell me about how, we both have 3 boys, and all of our kids are awesome, and they all teach us something. There's something unique about what we learn from our kids who arrive, not the way we expected. And so tell us what Pax has taught you, what he's teaching you, and like even how he's impacted you as a leader and a pastor.
It's really good. I was thinking about this, about how Pax has impacted my life. And I was actually like, how has Pax not impacted my life?
Well, there's a better question.
Yeah.
Yep.
But really, I think one of the first things is that life, even when life doesn't go the way you thought it would, that there's beauty in it. That doesn't mean it's always easy to find. That doesn't mean it's not unicorns and rainbows. It's not. No, 1,000. And we've had many conversations about this.
Yeah.
But I think, it's a little embarrassing, like as a pastor, like when Pax was born, I did have moments where I was like, all right, God, here we are. We love you. We're serving you. How does
this happen?
How does this happen? And we had those very raw moments. And I think but I think at the end of the day, and again, I feel like you've probably said this on the podcast before, because it's kind of like who you are. Like once you just choose to surrender that and go, okay, God, your ways they're higher than mine. And I don't know if I don't know how to navigate this. I don't know. I'm confused. I'm very scared. I'm
sad.
I'm sad.
I'm disappointed.
Yes,
those are honest emotions.
I'm grieving, and I'm, and when I look into the future, I'm panicked. I'm like, But once I think Pax, honestly, has taught me to see the beauty in the every day, and to look for it. And because it's there, like it's there.
It is.
And oh my gosh, there's so many things. Like it just, I remember, Jer, when we found out and we had to announce to the church that we had PAX, because we wanted to set the tone. We didn't want a bunch of I'm sorries. We wanted, like, he is a gift to our family. And he said, PAX, God gave PAX to us so that we could take care of him. But he's like, I think more importantly, so that he could take care of us.
Oh, wow.
And and I think I've seen that. Like, even with our 2 older boys, we have, 3 boys. Our oldest is 23, then 21, and then Pax is pulling up the rears there. You know what I mean? At 11. And he, I think some of the things, honestly, that I prayed for my 2 older boys, God answered those prayers through Pax.
Wow.
Like, when I would think about and pray about, I want my kids to be aware. I want them to be loving, compassionate. I want them to see the world differently. I don't want them to be selfish and, me focused. And I think PAX shifted that for a lot of us, and even our church, honestly. Like, it opened our it opened our eyes to so much, and to a whole different community, and to friendships. And so I think really with
So one of the things that PAX has done here is that you created the Champions Club. And I want to talk about that real quick before we end, because first of all, I think it's super cool, and I think it's a manifestation of your story. And I always think that out of the things of our lives that are challenging, we get to choose how the story goes. We get to make the choice about what we're going to do with it. We can be a victim or we can be a creator. I mean, those are sometimes the choices that we have to make.
So good.
And so it's much more fun and exciting and challenging and courageous to be a creator, and it's easier to be a victim. Oh, this happened to us. Oh, so that's what I love about the example of Champions Club. So tell us about Champions Club and tell us why it's important. And then I'll have a couple things to say about it too.
Okay, awesome. So Champions Club is our ministry to those with disabilities in our church. And we, so it's ages 4 through, we have a teen program, and then we also have adults that we call illuminators. And so we serve that community on a weekly basis through Champions Club. And it was really interesting. We did not have that ministry called Champions Club at the church before Pax was born. After Pax was born, we were like, all of a sudden our hearts were exposed to a whole community of people. We're discovering that there's families who can't go to church because they're the typical classroom was not conducive for their child to be in. And so we were like, what? I mean, I had never heard that before. I had no idea that parents who were not, or one parent was going one Sunday, and then the other parent was going the next Sunday, and they were flip-flopping because because their child needed some, special attention and a place where they could be cared for. And so we were like, oh my goodness. So we heard about this place called Champions Club at a church down in Houston. And so we were like, well, we're gonna go. So Pax was 6 weeks old. We loaded him up, and we went down, and we saw their Champions Club, and we were like, oh my goodness, we've got to have this in Rockford. Wow. And so honestly, we put it out to our church, and it was the vision of it out to our church, and within 6 weeks, we had raised $100,000, which was a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a lot of money for where we are at. And I mean, it was crazy, especially for where the church was at 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so then we just set out, and it's honestly the most beautiful thing that we have at the church. It's like, I feel like everything else we've done has been like rubbing 2 dimes together, what I mean, 2 pennies together, to like, we do all of our own painting. We're very we tried to be very wise because, you know, we're a nonprofit.
Right.
But this, we're going over the
Right,
top.
yeah.
So Champions Club is the most beautiful place that we have at our church. And it's to serve that community and the community that we are, you know, honored to get to be a part of. And it's honestly, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But that came out of PAX. And we were like, we're going to, you know, I mean, here's the deal. Disability, it has marked us, but it doesn't define us.
That's right.
And so
it's part of who you are. It's not all of who you are.
It's not all of who I am. It's marked us. It is a part of us. I mean, like but it doesn't define us. And the way it's marked us is it's exposed our lives to new people, a new community, and we've decided what is our part to play in that.
Yeah. And it's also opens your hearts to people and in your awareness, and you brought other people into that awareness too. And I think that is something that I love about it, because my family's gotten to come, and Bodie gets to go to Champions Club, and there isn't, otherwise we would never be able to go to church as a family. I would never be able to sit with my other two boys, because if he was in there, he would be screaming and nobody would have a good time. So so I think one of the gifts of creating things out of our stories is seeing the cracks in our society, in the spaces that people don't want to see. And then saying, I'm going to stand in this little gap for you so that you can go to church with your family. I mean, that to me is like the fact that most places of faith, I'm just going to be really honest, who say that they follow Jesus, but people with disabilities and their families can't go to church. I mean, it's flabbergasting to me, you know? And so you're leading that and saying that, and not every church can do that, or every church, but it's that you're creating that awareness. And so I think that is super awesome. And if you're listening, think about doing that at your own church or in your own community, because it is really a gift.
And it doesn't have to be $100,000. Like, it doesn't, like,
you could get some group of people to volunteer, train them up a little bit.
Yes, exactly. I mean, there's a way to do it, but and to open your arms to that community. And I just want to honor you, Jess. You know, I know this isn't about, you know, I mean, you know, not expecting this, but I honor you, because I see the same thing in your story, that you continually create, you know, purpose out of pain. And I just commend you for that. You inspire me, and I think you are incredible, and your curiosity and how you just are committed to learning and growing, and in everything you do. It's beautiful, and your family they're lucky to have you, your boys and Eric, and and I'm honored to be your friend, and so grateful that God brought our paths together. I fully believe that.
Yes, I do too.
And it's been a really special friendship and relationship. And I'm honored to be your friend. Honored that you asked me. Hopefully, there's some good stuff in here.
No, this has been great. So I have one question before we end, because I've been asking all of my guests this question. And, you know, one of my goals this season, or kind of the theme, is like who we become and what we create from the heartaches we witness in others and the adversities that we face in our life. Like, who are we becoming because of that? We've really talked a lot about that today in, you know, talking about your work. But I want to know, what do you like about Jen? What's more beautiful about Jen? Not about just about you, because of the challenges that you've faced and because of the things that you've opened yourself up to in your life.
It's a good question.
I know it's a hard question.
I mean, I would say I love that I don't give up, that I'm just not going to give up. Like, it's just that, it's the whole stay the path. Like, I've always been kind of a feisty person, you know, and I think in this world nowadays, there isn't, I think there's a lot of starting and stopping things, and a lot of, I don't know, longevity is not.
Consistency,
longevity.
It's not rewarded.
And so I'm like, if I can be just someone who is just consistent, like, and I, you know, we've been pastors at this, we're at the same church, which is so crazy, from like since I was 2 years old. Like, I'll be 50 this year. So
I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah. Since I was 48 years.
Time.
And then Jared came when he was a freshman in high school. And we basically since he was like 21, which Jared will be, he's over 50 now.
We won't reveal his age.
But
No,
anyway,
yeah.
you know, I just think I'm like, I'm like, God, just let us be people who are planted and consistent. Like, oh, they're still there. They're still there. They're still there. They're still just loving people, loving Jesus. They're the same. If I show up, they're going to be there. And so I think for me, I think being consistent and sticking to something is, to me, I'm like, okay, we can do that, you know.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Jen.
Love you, my friend.
Love you too. Thank you for joining me here on the Heartstrong podcast. Please rate and review this podcast and share an episode that you love with a friend, because when you do, you help us grow our mission of encouraging people to grow through the challenges of their lives and to live their full potential. We'll see you next time.